حطها في الجول يا رياض، حطها في الجول يا رياض، حطها في الجول يا رياض.
السلام عليكم. لا تنسوا الاعجاب بالفيديو والاشتراك في القناة تشجيعا لنا لنستمر بنشر المزيد إن شاء الله.
Sterling had a very public discussion with AS last week, flirting with Real Madrid, if you like.
Yeah, it's not surprising to see that Real Madrid would be interested in a player like Sterling, and it's not surprising to see that Sterling might be tempted to go to a club that has got the best record in Europe.
Can you blame him?
I'm quite frankly stunned that that interview saw the light of day.
Hello and welcome to Goals Preview Show. Today on the agenda we're looking at one of the standout fixtures from the Champions League last 16 round as Manchester City travel to the Spanish capital to face Real Madrid. Now both these teams have had a pretty turbulent week, and to elaborate on the reasons why I'm joined by Peter Staunton. Hello there.
Hello.
Hello, hello. And our Manchester City correspondent Jonathan Smith. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good, yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, we'll see. Like I say, it has been a bit of a tricky week for both teams. We'll start with Real Madrid because their biggest issue has happened in the last couple of days. They've lost Hazard.
They have, yeah. 10 matches all season. That's all Hazard has played. 700 minutes in all competitions and one goal. And now it looks like it's all over for him. He's not going to play again before the end of the season. A broken ankle, which he suffered in the defeat on Saturday night to complete what was a washout of a fixture for Real Madrid and for Zinedine Zidane. Huge blow for them heading into what is a crucial week, what with Man City in midweek and then Barcelona at the weekend.
What kind of role would he have played though if he hasn't featured as much for them and hasn't maybe arrived at the Bernabeu the way he would have liked to? I mean, would he have been the key man against City?
I think so. We've had glimpses here and there of what Hazard is going to be for Real Madrid. They clearly see him playing where Cristiano Ronaldo played, but obviously in a very different way. Left side of attack, and he's going to be primarily the ball carrier, take him into the final third, looking for 1-2s, assists, and maybe even a few goals of his own. He played really well in the group stage against Paris Saint-Germain, and that's when he had an ankle injury as well. That was going all the way back to the autumn. He had a recurrence of what was a pretty bad ankle injury for him, originally suffered when he was at Chelsea 2017. But they've never really been able to count on him as a star man yet. And I think if there's one consolation to be taken for Real Madrid is that they're not losing somebody who's been so central to their operations for the course of the season so far. Somebody like Karim Benzema, for example, even though he hasn't scored in a couple of months now. So Hazard has not yet had that opportunity to bed in to become that key man for Real Madrid. And if he was another 6 weeks further along, I think in his Real Madrid career, and then they lost him, it might be a bigger blow. But certainly not something that Zinedine Zidane wanted to countenance at this stage of the season. No,
but for Pep, it's quite good news, right?
Yeah, well, it has to be. I'm never keen on celebrating injuries to opposition players, and certainly Pep isn't. He always likes to beat the best, play the best, and win the Champions League on merit. But yeah, he's such a good player. We've seen him against City over the last few years at Chelsea. He's won games against City by himself. He's that good, isn't he? But it's a huge boost. So you look through the Real Madrid team, and without him, there's not an awful lot of pace, and you think that might suit City a little bit.
How do you think about that?
Well, they've had to win games in different ways during this season, and probably since the latter stages of the group stage. They've really come into their own as a defensive team rather than an offensive team. So they've been winning by the odd goal here and there and really staying in games until those crucial moments pop up for a player like a Benzema or even like a Casemiro, who scored a few important goals during the course of the season. But primarily it's about keeping clean sheets. Courtois has been an unbelievable form for Real Madrid this season. That solid, settled back five unit that they tend to use. They've got key men like Sergio Ramos, of course, Rafael Varane still going strong at the centre of the Real Madrid defence. They've been setting records not only in Spain but in Europe in terms of the number of the goals that they've conceded or not conceded, as the case may be, this season, and that's where their strength has come this season. They've been a really serious team, grinding out results, trying to make sure that the opposition get no real opportunity to attack that goal. And like I said, Courtois has been in terrific form when teams have actually broken through on them as well. But that's all gone pear-shaped in the last two fixtures.
So what's happened then? Is it just because that focus on the rear guard as opposed to going forward, has that cost them maybe a momentum, if you like? Well,
I think they've had two slip-ups, but they've come in a row, which is not ideal. Obviously, they had that 2-2 draw with Celta Vigo last week, and then obviously losing on Saturday night to Levante. that was only their second defeat of the season, which shows you in La Liga. That shows you, how solid they have been on the domestic front. But the problem for Real Madrid is that those two bad performances and those two freak results came so close together. And you combine that with the Eden Hazard injury as well. So they are going to be relying on other people for those big individual moments. Karim Benzema has done a really good job for them this season, probably the most underrated striker in Europe up until, well, certainly the winter break in Spain. But he's sort of been off the boil. Other than that goal against Atletico at the start of February, he hasn't really scored those, come into the fore for those big defining moments in Real Madrid matches. And if they're going to get anything out of these two legs, then Benzema in particular is going to have to stand up and be counted.
Okay, cool. Looking at Man City, they had a huge game against Leicester at the weekend. Talk me through it. How was it from your perspective?
Yeah, it was a perfect way to go into this big game against Real Madrid. I think they obviously had this winter break, which I think may have been a concern about the rhythm going into this Real Madrid game, because they were only going to have one game, a difficult one against Leicester, and while the Premier League's gone, it's still important. They still want to finish second to Liverpool. But that West Ham game was rearranged, and it was such a comfortable, it's like a training session. It was so easy. So it's just a nice steady build-up going into this Leicester game, which was a bit harder. And clean sheet, they bossed the game, they deserved to win. Key players back, particularly Laporte. Sterling's wasn't there, but you think he's got to be in with the shout of playing at the Bernabeu. So while Real Madrid are suffering injuries, City are just getting them back at the right time. So it feels like it's going the right way for them.
How big of a deal was it having Laporte back?
Huge. It's not just that he's a good defender, it's his presence. He just settles everyone down. He seems to organise. Everyone around him plays a little bit more solid. He's played 3 games since he came back from that knee injury, and City haven't conceded a goal in any of those 3 games. Although he hasn't played 90 minutes, that's the concern going into Bernabeu. I asked Pep about it after the game against Leicester. He said he'll be fine, he can play 90 minutes. So absolutely key. City are full of quality players. De Bruyne, Sterling, Aguero. But at the moment, you think Laporte possibly is the most important one, because they never replaced Kompany, and without Kompany and Laporte, they're just not as solid. So having him back is absolutely huge.
You mentioned Raheem Sterling there, and we're going to get onto it in a little while with the debacle that is the FFP situation. Sterling had a very public discussion with AS last week, talking about sort of flirting with Real Madrid, if you like.
Yeah.
That's not what you want when you're about to play Real Madrid, is it?
Well, everyone's trying to play it down from City's side,
Yeah.
But I mean, he's spoken before that he would like to play abroad. He's been very successful, certainly at City. He's won 2 Premier Leagues. He's won domestic trophies, but the one that's missing is the Champions League. There's as it stands at the moment, City are banned for the next 2 years for the Champions League. So he's got 3 years left on his deal. So either they win it this year or they win it in his final year. It's not surprising to see that Real Madrid would be interested in a player like Sterling, and it's not surprising to see that Sterling might be tempted to go to a club that has got the best record in Europe, better than anybody. Exactly. Can you blame him? Or bad timing?
I'm quite frankly stunned that interview saw the light of day. I mean, it's not an old interview that's just come to light. He's actually sat down while the draw has been made, after the draw has been made, and spoken about his desire to, or played up his desire to go and join the club they're about to play. He has a Real Madrid shirt over one shoulder and a Man City shirt over the other. I mean, the optics of that alone are absolutely dreadful. And when we talk about Neymar and his public flirtations with Barcelona and Kylian Mbappe maybe at PSG as well, talking about wanting to join Real Madrid one day. But Man City are a club that consider themselves having arrived at the very top level. If you want to win trophies, under Pep Guardiola, Man City's not a bad place to be. So when you do have your top earners, your top stars, openly expressing desire to join not only rival clubs in Europe, but your immediate rivals for a place in the knockout in the quarterfinals, I just think it's absolutely stunning. I cannot believe that that's happened.
What do you think it will do for his focus ahead of this game though, as well? Because obviously he's going into, well, maybe playing there next season. We don't know.
Well, it might help. It might give him something to show off. But I think the City players are very focused. I know they've got this thing going on in the background, but the Premier League's gone. Everything is now going. The players are certainly going to be completely focused on trying to do as well as they can in the Champions League, and it doesn't get much harder than the last 16 draw to get Real Madrid. So they're just going to have to throw everything at it. So they can't be too distracted. You mentioned it's in the background. Let's bring it to the forefront now.
Manchester City they're going to CAS to appeal the situation.
They're going to go,
could
yeah.
could you just give us a quick rundown of what the sort of the agenda is in that regard, please?
Well, at the moment, the UEFA have found them guilty of breaching financial fair play rules, so they're banned for the next 2 seasons of the Champions League, and they got a £25 million fine. So that's as it stands. So City are now going to take that and appeal to the Court of Arbitration of Sport to get that decision overturned. And as it stands, there's no decision on whether they will be involved in next season's competition pending the results of that appeal. I think both sides want a resolution as quickly as possible. City insist that they are confident that they will win that appeal, that they have got irrefutable evidence, and in a fair hearing, fair and impartial hearing, that they will be back in Europe. UEFA obviously think City are guilty of breaching rules, so it's up to CAS now to see where it goes.
These sort of situations often take quite a long time. Do you think it could be resolved before the end of the season?
As Johnny says, they were looking for a quick resolution, but I mean, if it does go to appeal, there's every chance that this could be hanging over them as pending appeal for quite some time, which would mean that they're entitled to come back into the Champions League next season, which crucially will be into the last year of Pep Guardiola's contract. Now, we know that he's completed English football in a sense, taking 198 points from 2 seasons' work, winning two titles in a row. So there aren't really, and winning a domestic treble last year as well, there aren't really that many challenges left for Guardiola on the domestic front. What he really needs to do with Man City to solidify and cement that legacy is to win the Champions League. But if they're locked out of the competition next season and Pep can't win it, then what does it mean for his future? Because he has said that he does want to see out his terms at Man City, that he's not going to leave before time, whether they're in the Champions League or not. But obviously, if they don't qualify, or if they're not entitled to take part in the competition next year, then he's not going to win the competition unless he can do it this season.
Back to the actual fixture itself.
Yes.
Do you think that Real Madrid can get through this game? Do you think that they can win?
I think if Real Madrid got out of the home leg without conceding a goal, I think they would be very happy. But I think if Man City then go and score away from home, I would put them favourites to go through. A lot of it will depend on what way Zinedine Zidane goes, in terms of the personality picks. I mean, you talk about the difficulties in picking a Pep Guardiola team at the moment. The difficulty in picking a Real Madrid team at the moment is astonishing. There isn't really that same consistency certainly within his attacking players right now. So it's hard to know whether it's going to be Rodrigo or whether Vinicius might get through, whether Gareth Bale might even be named in the squad or not. We do know Benzema is likely to play, but around him, your Iscos, your Viniciuses, your Rodrigos, your Bales, it's very hard to predict on what way Zidane is going to go. And I think he'll look to keep it as tight as he can over both legs and then take his chance. Maybe lay it on in the second leg, try and chase that away goal and make it a sting in the tail for Guardiola. But I don't expect it to be a 4-3, a 4-4 over the course of 2 legs. No way, not this time.
Does that make it tricky for Pep to put together his game plan, because Real Madrid are so unpredictable in terms of how they're going to line up?
It does, and he's tried various systems in Europe before in the knockout stages, and it's not gone well during his time at City. And I mean, one tactic he might do to take the defence completely out of the equation is what he did away to Manchester United in the Carabao Cup. He didn't play any strikers that day, and the United centre halves weren't really sure what to do, whether to go further forward, drop in, and City was the movement was just fantastic. It was so fluid, and they just pulled them apart. I think Real Madrid have obviously got better players, but that might be an interesting system. He might just leave Aguero out the side, which most people would find surprising. He's done it before in Europe away at Barcelona. They played very well that day. It ended 4-0, but that was probably down to Claudio Bravo getting sent off. Yeah. So that might be an interesting way to go into that game.
What do you think?
Well, I think if they're going to play like that, you need your wingers to be on their form needs to be spectacular. We know Bernardo Silva's had his struggles this season. He hasn't been consistent. But the big one will be Raheem Sterling. Now, we know he's struggled for fitness over the course of the last, maybe 6 weeks or so. But he really hasn't been on his game probably since before, around that time, before the New Year. When they played Wolves, he got 2 goals against Wolves. And that was the last time I think we saw Sterling play as he's capable of playing. Since then, he's been dramatically off the boil. And that's gone back about 2 months now. So I think if City are going to play like that and not have a centre forward, and they're looking to get balls down the channels into their wingers to score, Sterling has got to find his finishing boots and find them soon.
Mahrez is on it at the moment. Mahrez it's not been easy since he moved from Leicester, but he's gradually particularly this season, getting better and better. And on Saturday, he was fantastic. I mean, the goal was all about him, his movement, and it Leicester defence didn't know which way he was going. And he picked the perfect pass, which is not always something he's done during his time at City. So he's really getting into the Guardiola groove now. So I think it's going to be tight. If they get a goal in the Bernabeu, I think they'll go into the game, into the second leg as strong favourites. Even if it's a 2-1 defeat or a 1-1 draw, I'd see them being the firm favourites to get through.
Oh, well, we'll see. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much, John, for coming
Cheers.
in today.
Thank you.
And Pete, I'm sure I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Jay.
And thank you very much for watching as well. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can get notifications of all our videos as they're released, and subscribe to the channel as well, obviously. And lastly, enjoy the game. Bye-bye.